My husband said pregnancy made me spill the burning oil. Then he deleted the kitchen camera while I was in the hospital. Part 1. The first thing my husband did after the burning oil hit me was take my phone. I was 7 months pregnant, curled on our kitchen floor with one arm wrapped around my belly and the other already blistering beneath my sleeve. "Evan, call 911. He stood above me, breathing hard, my phone locked in his hand. Only minutes earlier, I had confronted him about $12,000 missing from our joint account. He told me not to worry about money while I was pregnant. I told him I planned to return to work after our daughter was born and that I was opening an account he couldn't control. "You can barely stand long enough to make dinner," he said. "I get dizzy sometimes. That doesn't make me helpless." His eyes moved toward the small security camera above the kitchen doorway. Then he crossed the room and pulled out its power cord. "The light is bothering me." I should have understood what that meant. Instead, I turned back toward the stove. When I reached for the skillet, Evan grabbed the handle and jerked it toward himself. The pan twisted between us. Hot oil rose in a shining wave and struck my arm, shoulder, and side. Now he crouched beside me without calling for help. "Listen carefully," he said. "You got dizzy." I stared at him through the pain. "You pulled the pan. You're confused. Give me my phone." He glanced at the dead camera. Then he leaned closer. "Tell them you lost your balance." By the time he finally drove me to the hospital, part of my sleeve had fused to my skin. He told the nurse I had refused an ambulance because I was embarrassed. By the time the doctor entered, his story sounded almost reasonable. "My wife has had dizzy spells throughout the pregnancy," he explained. "She insisted on cooking, lost her balance, and pulled the pan down." I lay beneath a fetal monitor while a nurse treated my burns. Every time I tried to speak, Evan answered first. "She stopped working because she hasn't been well. She gets confused when she's frightened. She probably doesn't remember exactly what happened." "I remember." Evan squeezed my uninjured hand. "Claire, let them help you." Dr. Maya Ortiz looked at his hand over mine. Then she studied the pattern of burns along my arm and sighed. "Mr. Bennett, I need to examine your wife privately. I'm her husband, and she is my patient." His smile tightened. He took my phone with him when he left the room. Dr. Ortiz waited until the door closed. Then she lowered her voice. "Claire, I need you to answer without thinking about what your husband wants you to say." My daughter's heartbeat pulsed steadily from the monitor beside me. The doctor looked once more at the angle of the burn. "Did that skillet fall toward you?" she asked. "Or did someone pull it from the other side?" For the first time since the oil hit me, someone was looking at the evidence instead of Evan, and I realized my husband's story might not be as perfect as he thought. Part 2. I told Dr. Ortiz the truth. Evan had pulled the skillet. He had disconnected the camera first. Then he had taken my phone and instructed me to blame pregnancy dizziness. But there had been no witness, and the camera appeared empty. 2 days later, Evan brought me home and treated the house like a place I was no longer trusted to manage. He locked up my medication, kept the car keys, and said he had reorganized our finances for my safety. While he was upstairs, I searched the kitchen for my burn care instructions. At the back of a drawer, beneath old recipe cards, I found a cracked tablet I had not used in years. The battery was nearly dead, but the screen lit up. A notification appeared. "Your shared camera access has been removed by Evan Bennett." The old device was still connected to an account I had created before our marriage. The video itself was gone, but the system had preserved a thumbnail. It showed Evan standing beneath the kitchen camera, one hand reaching toward its power cord 3 minutes before I was burned. Then I found the account history. The camera had reconnected after we left for the hospital. Evan had logged in, deleted an event, changed the password, and removed my access. A banking alert appeared beneath it. While I was in the burn unit, he had transferred every remaining dollar from our joint account. That was when I understood the real danger. Evan wasn't only hiding what he had done. He was using my injuries to make sure I could never leave him. And buried in my old email was the name of one person he believed no longer existed in my life. Part 3. The name buried in my old email was Nora Wick. She had been my father's attorney for nearly 20 years. After I walked away from my family, she sent birthday cards for 3 years before I stopped answering. I typed with my uninjured hand, "My name is Claire Bennett. I may need emergency help. My husband injured me and deleted security footage. I have limited account data on an old device. Please tell me whether my father's trust still exists." I attached the screenshots and sent the message before I could lose my nerve. Nora called the next morning while Evan was outside talking to a contractor. "The trust exists." I sat on the closed toilet lid, pressing the cracked tablet to my ear. My father didn't revoke it. No. He amended it after his diagnosis. He removed himself from any decision-making authority because he did not want your access to depend on. Reconciliation. For years I had imagined my father's final judgment as a locked door. Instead, he had left the key on my side. "Nora, I don't want his money to make this disappear." "It cannot," she said. "Money cannot prove what happened in that kitchen." She explained that my screenshots were important, but not enough. A thumbnail could be challenged. Cached data could be called a glitch. The camera company's server records, bank's original transaction history had to be preserved, with my permission. She sent emergency preservation requests to both companies and arranged for a specialist to copy the tablet without changing its data. Then she offered me a furnished apartment owned by the trust. "I don't want to run back to the life I left," I whispered. "You are not being asked to return to anything," Nora said. "You are asking for a locked door between you and a man who hurt you." Before we ended the call, she told me the first server response had arrived. The kitchen camera had not failed on its own. It had been manually disconnected from a device registered to Evan. Part 4. That afternoon, I called Dana at the hospital. This time, I told her I was ready to document everything and make a safety plan. Evan sensed the change before he understood it. He began watching me more closely, rearranged the kitchen drawer where I had found the tablet, and asked whether anyone from the hospital had called. He started carrying my phone even when he went into the garage. Then he brought the folder back to the dining table. Inside was a financial power of attorney and a medical release broad enough to give him access to nearly every decision involving me. "These are temporary," he said. "Just until you're stable. I'm not signing them." His expression barely moved. "Claire, I want a lawyer to review them." "A lawyer?" He gave a short laugh. "With what money?" I said nothing. He leaned over the table, using the same patient voice he used in front of doctors. "You burned yourself because you insisted on cooking when you could barely stand. Had to get you to the hospital. I had to explain everything. You didn't call an ambulance. You refused one." I held his gaze. "That isn't what happened." His hand flattened beside the signature line. "After what happened in that kitchen, no reasonable person is going to trust you alone with a baby." The words settled between us. He had not merely hidden what he did. He intended to turn my burns into proof that I was an unfit mother. "I'm not signing," I repeated. His calm mask slipped. "You don't understand what happens if people decide you're not capable." "I understand exactly what you want them to decide." For the first time, uncertainty entered his face. I told him I would discuss the papers at my follow-up appointment, with Dr. Ortiz and Dana present. He agreed because he still believed the hospital belonged to his version of the story. What he did not know was that Nora would be sitting beside me. Part 5. 3 days later, Evan and I sat in a small consultation room near the maternity wing. He wore a navy jacket, and the expression he used in business meetings was reasonable, faintly burdened by everyone else's incompetence. Dr. Ortiz sat beside Dana. Nora sat beside me. Evan looked at her. "And you are my attorney?" I said. His face went still. Then he began with the same polished story. My pregnancy had made me unstable on my feet. He had moved our money only to protect the household. And he had deleted the camera event because he did not want images of his injured wife stored online. I was trying to preserve her dignity, he said. Dana turned to me. Claire, do you want to respond? My mouth went dry. For 6 years, Evan had trained me to speak in fragments while he supplied the meaning. I placed both hands on the table. He disconnected the camera before I was burned. He pulled the skillet while I was holding it. Then he took my phone and told me to say I got dizzy. Evan shook his head slowly. She's confused. Nora connected a forensic copy of the old tablet to the room's monitor. The first image appeared. Evan beneath the kitchen camera at 6:41 p.m. One hand raised toward the power cord. This preview was cached before the device went offline, Nora said. The provider's verified export shows that camera was manually disconnected from a phone, registered to Evan Bennett. A timeline followed. The camera came back online after we left for the hospital. Evan logged in. An event was deleted. My access was removed. I managed the security system, he said. Dr. Ortiz looked directly at him. Then why did you tell us it had been broken for days? He ignored her. Nora brought up the bank. Records showing every remaining dollar in our joint account had been transferred to Evan's private account. While I was in the burn unit, that was for medical expenses. You paid the hospital deposit from another account the next morning, Nora replied. His composure cracked. This is a marital disagreement. None of this proves how she burned herself. Nora looked at me before opening the final recovered file, and I realized she had saved the one piece Evan still did not know existed. Part 6. The recording lasted only 6 seconds. First came the metallic crash of the skillet. After that came Evan's voice, close and unmistakable. Tell them you got dizzy. No one spoke. Evan rose so quickly, his chair scraped across the floor. That doesn't prove what happened before the recording. He reached toward the tablet, but Dana stepped between us and pressed the security button beneath the table. I did not grab for the device. I did not need to protect the only copy anymore. You're right, I said. It doesn't show the oil hitting me. Relief flickered across his face. But it proves you prepared the lie before you called for help. The server record proves you disconnected the camera before I was hurt. The bank record proves what you did while I was being treated. Dr. Ortiz folded her hands, and the burn pattern is more consistent with the pan being pulled from the opposite side than with Mrs. Bennett, dropping it directly onto herself. Security officers appeared at the door. I turned to Dana. I am revoking Evan's access to my medical information. I will not be discharged into his care. I want the incident formally documented, and I want help contacting the police. Evan stared at me as though I had broken a rule he thought was permanent. Then he said the sentence beneath every missing key, every locked account, and every decision he had made for me. You have nowhere to go. He did not shout it. He said it with certainty. For years, I had feared he was right. I do now, I said. Security escorted him from the room. There was no dramatic arrest in the hallway and no instant verdict. But for the first time since the oil hit me, Evan was outside a locked door and I was the one who had decided he could not come through it. Part 7. Real consequences moved more slowly than stories make them seem. I gave a formal statement. The hospital preserved its records, and the camera company provided its verified account history through the proper legal process. A judge issued a temporary protective order. The bank froze the transferred funds while ownership was investigated. Evan hired an attorney and called everything a misunderstanding between an anxious pregnant woman, worried husband. But he could no longer call it only my word against his. That evening, Nora drove me to the apartment the trust had prepared. It was not one of my family's grand houses. It had 2 bedrooms, a narrow balcony, and pale kitchen cabinets that needed repainting. The first night, I slept with a chair under the front door handle. The second night I slept for 4 uninterrupted hours. I began meeting with a counselor and a lawyer who represented only me. Dana helped me change my emergency contact and create a plan for the birth. Nora never pressured me to reconcile with my relatives or return to the life I had left. The trust is a resource, she reminded me, not a leash. Those words changed something in me. I had spent years believing that accepting help meant surrendering my independence. Evan had depended on that belief. He knew I would rather struggle alone than admit I needed anyone. By the time my daughter was born, the burns on my arm had faded from angry red to uneven pink. I named her Grace, not because grace meant forgiving Evan, but because grace was the distance between the life I thought I had ruined and the life I was still allowed to build. When the nurse placed her against my chest, I made her one promise. She would never be taught that love required giving someone else the keys to her life.